Hi, third graders. Welcome to the next part of our opinion writing project. So before I start teaching, I just wanted to share a little story with you. My grandmother on my mom's side, her name was Marilyn, so I called her Grandma Marilyn. And she lived in Florida, but she would come visit about once a year, and we would visit her once a year. So I didn't see her super often, but I'd see her enough. And I was just thinking about how she would try to convince me of some of the funniest things. Like, they weren't really opinions, they were just things that she would try to get me to do. Um, I remember one day I was sitting in her kitchen and I was eating a sandwich she'd made for me, and I didn't eat the crust. And she said, "You have to eat the crust, you know." And I was like, "Well, why?" And she said, "I just know that if you eat the crusts to your sandwiches, you will be healthy and your hair will get curly." And I just remember thinking like, I don't really believe you. I don't think that's really going to happen. And then another time I remember that I made a face about something, like I was maybe grumpy or cranky or something like that. And I made a face and she said, "You shouldn't make faces like that." And I thought, why? And I think I said to her, "Why shouldn't I make faces like that? That was yucky. I made a yucky face." And she said, "If you make faces like that, your face might get stuck that way. And you wouldn't want your face to look like that for the rest of your life, would you?" And again, I remember kind of thinking, I don't really believe you. I don't really think that's true. So I'm wondering if you've ever had experiences like that when people have tried to tell you something, it's their opinion maybe, or just something that they want you to do, and they give you a reason and you just don't totally believe yet them. You don't think they really know what they're talking about, or they're just making things up. But they don't have great reasons for what they're telling you, right? And it's kind of like an uncomfortable feeling, and you're not sure what to do, and you just know you don't really want to go along with what they're saying. So the reason I'm telling you about that, and I'm sorry, Grandma Marilyn, I really love you. I just, it was just a good story to tell right now. Um, the reason I'm telling you that is because I want you to think about how important it is to have reasons for things that are true and that you actually know about, things like reasons that are accurate. If you want to share your opinion with somebody else, it's so important to have reasons to back that opinion up. And it's also important that those reasons are true reasons, that you really know what you're talking about with those reasons. So, the reason I'm telling you all of this is because that's what we're doing when we take notes about Sonia Sotomayor and Wilma Rudolph. We're giving ourselves really true, accurate, good reasons for forming an opinion about something. When we decide which person we would rather meet, it's important to know about those people so that we can share our really good reasons for deciding who we would rather meet. So we kind of did that already for Wilma Rudolph. And today I'm going to read to you about Sonia Sotomayor. So this lesson, like the Wilma Rudolph lesson, it's kind of long. So you might want to watch it and do the work over 2 or 3 different days. I'll give you some suggestions as we go through the video about when you might want to pause it to think, or when you might want to pause it to catch up on your note taking, and even when you might want to just stop and take a break and pick it up again the next day. But those are just suggestions. You can do what feels right to you. Okay, so I have 2 biographies about Sonia Sotomayor. I'm just going to read through them once, and give you some time to stop and think about what might be important to remember about her. And then I will read through them again and help you take some notes about Sonia Sotomayor. Okay, so this is called S is for Sonia, and it's from this really great book called Rad American Women A to Z. Sonia Sotomayor is the S in the A to Z. Okay, so I'm just going to read it and then I'll read the next one. Okay. Sonia Sotomayor, who reminds us to be fair and fierce all at once. Sonia Sotomayor was raised in a housing project in the Bronx in the 1950s. Her parents came to New York City from Puerto Rico, where they both had only limited opportunities for education. They didn't speak much English and they worked hard, so they couldn't, so sorry, they didn't speak much English and they worked hard so they could send Sonia and her brother to a good school. Sonia was very smart. She had perfect attendance and the best grades in the whole school. She was also brave. When she was 7, she was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, a disease that affects the way your body digests sugar. She had to give herself a shot every day, all by herself. Even as a child, Sonia always loved the law. She read all the Nancy Drew books and thought of becoming a detective. But then she learned about judges and lawyers, and that changed her mind. I was going to college, and I was going to become an attorney. An attorney is a lawyer. And I knew that when I was 10, she once said. So just stop and pause for a moment and think to yourself, what have you learned about Sonia Sotomayor so far? Stop and think. So we've kind of learned a lot of things already, right? We've learned that Sonia Sotomayor's parents came from Puerto Rico. They worked really hard so that she could do well in school. We learned that Sonia Sotomayor did really well in school, and she knew from the time she was little that she wanted to be a judge when she grew up. You might remember some other things too. We really learned a lot about her. Sonia got a full scholarship to Princeton University. That means she and her family did not have to pay for her to go to that school. It was paid for. Sonia got a full scholarship to Princeton University. She was thrilled, but there were hardly any other Latinos there, and most people came from families with lots of money, nothing like what she knew back in the Bronx. She felt like a visitor landing in an alien country. At first, she felt too intimidated to ask questions during class, but Sonia believed in herself and knew she deserved to be there. Over time, she became a student leader and activist and helped convince Princeton to hire more Latino professors and offer courses about Latin American history. At graduation, she was at the top of her class yet again. Sonia worked as a lawyer for many years and as an advocate for women and the Puerto Rican community. But her dream was to be a judge. When it happened, Sonia was the first Puerto Rican woman to become a judge in a U.S. federal court. In 2009, President Obama called Sonia to see if she would like to join the Supreme Court, the most important court in the United States. She was so excited that she had to put a hand over her chest to calm her pounding heart. Sonia is the first Latina to ever serve on the Supreme Court and the third female Supreme Court justice in history. Okay, so stop again for a moment, just pause and think to yourself about what you have learned about Sonia Sotomayor so far. So again, we learned a lot, right? There's a lot to learn about Sonia Sotomayor, but some things that I remember that I think are important are that she went to Princeton University and she was one of the only Latina students who were there. And she kind of felt different for a couple of reasons, because she was Latina and also because her family didn't have as much money as many of the other families that went to Princeton. But even though she felt so different, that didn't stop her from working really, really hard and being very successful. And when she graduated at the top of her class. And then I also remember that she got onto the Supreme Court, which is the most important court in the United States. And she was the first Latina or Latino person to ever serve on the Supreme Court and only the third woman Supreme Court judge in history. Feels like a pretty big deal. Okay, so those are some things we learned in the first biography. I'm going to switch over to the second biography now. And again, I'm just going to read it and offer some times to pause and think about what you've learned. And then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, this is from Time for Kids. And it's just called Sonia Sotomayor by Kio Herrera. There she is. Sonia Sotomayor, who lived from June 1954 to the present, she is still living, made history when she became the first Hispanic U.S. Supreme Court Justice. She assumed the role on August 8, 2009. So just pausing for a moment, the words Hispanic and Latina or Latino are often used in the same way. In this case, they are meant to say that Sonia Sotomayor is from a family that came from Latin America. So she came from Puerto Rico. And the word that these articles are using to show that she came from that country were Latina in the first article and Hispanic in this article. Okay, so I'm gonna reread that. Sonia Sotomayor, who lived from June 25th, 1954 to the present, she's still living, made history when she became the first Hispanic U.S. Supreme Court Justice. She assumed the role on August 8th, 2009. Sonia Sotomayor is from the Bronx in New York City. Her parents, Juan and Selena Baez Sotomayor, had recently come to the United States from Puerto Rico. They wanted to start a family in New York. As a child, Sotomayor learned she had diabetes. She quickly learned to manage the illness. In later years, she said that helped her gain a strong sense of discipline, which means a strong sense of kind of having to take care of things. When Sotomayor was 9 years old, her father died. Her mother worked multiple jobs to provide for Sonia and her brother Juan. Sotomayor has said that she turned to books to cope with the loss of her father. She credits her mother with encouraging her love of reading and her desire to excel in school. That means do well in school. My mother taught us that the key to success in America is a good education, said Sotomayor during her Supreme Court confirmation hearing. She became a top student at Cardinal Spellman High School in the Bronx. She received a scholarship to attend Princeton University in New Jersey. Okay, so I'm going to pause because there's some different things that we learn in this article. I'm going to pause and just think for a moment, what else did I learn about Sonia Sotomayor in the part of the biography that I just read? So some things that I learned in this article are that her father died when she was 9 years old, and also that her mom really encouraged her to read and to do well in school. And that had a big impact on Sonia Sotomayor. I wonder if you learned those same things or if you learned some other things. I wish I could talk to you about it. Okay, so this part of the article is called New Challenges. Sotomayor's first 2 years at Princeton were tough. She once said that when she got to the school, she felt like a visitor landing in an alien country. But when she graduated in 1976, Sotomayor received the Pine Prize. It is one of the university's highest honors. After Princeton, Sotomayor attended Yale Law School in Connecticut. At Yale, she was an editor at the Yale Law Journal. It is a journal that reviews legal cases. She earned her law degree in 1979. Sotomayor then returned to New York City. There, she worked as an assistant district attorney until 1984. She then worked for a private law firm. She also volunteered at organizations such as the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund. So the caption for this picture says, Sotomayor was sworn into office in 2009 with her mother, Selena Baez, by her side. Sotomayor credits her mother for inspiring her love of books and her desire to excel in school. The judge who saved baseball. Sotomayor's skills as a lawyer and her volunteer work caught the eye of political leaders. In 1992, President George H.W. Bush nominated her to the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York City. During her time at this job, Sotomayor heard the 1995 case dealing with a Major League Baseball strike. Team owners had changed rules about players' salary and free agency without asking the players' union. So this means that owners of baseball teams had decided to change rules about what baseball players were paid and what they could do without asking the leaders of the players if this was okay. So the baseball players decided to stop playing baseball until this had been figured out in a fair way. And Sonia Sotomayor was the judge who helped make a decision about this case. Sotomayor decided that it had been wrong for team owners to do this. Her decision ended the strike. The strike had caused the cancellation of the entire 1994 postseason and World Series. Okay, I'm going to stop for a moment and just have you think, what else have you learned about Sonia Sotomayor from the part of the article that I just read? So I'm thinking there was a lot again, but the thing that seemed really important to me is that actually there's two things. Sonia Sotomayor keeps getting kind of like bigger and bigger opportunities to be a judge, that like a more and more important judge. And then another thing that I learned is that she made a really important decision about baseball that helped keep baseball going at a time when players had decided to stop playing because they felt like they weren't being treated fairly. And she said, yep, players, you're right. Team owners, you have to do what the players are telling you. And that started baseball again. Caption for this picture says, Sonia Sotomayor, top row, third from left, is the first Hispanic American to serve on the Supreme Court. Okay, last bit of the article here. In 1998, President Bill Clinton appointed Sotomayor to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. In 2009, President Barack Obama called her the judge that saved baseball when he nominated her to serve as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. The Senate quickly confirmed her. She joined the court on August 8, 2009. She was the first Hispanic and the third woman to become a Supreme Court justice. Recently, Justice Sotomayor has presided over Supreme Court cases dealing with issues on privacy, civil rights, and First Amendment rights. In 2013, she published her memoir. It's a book she wrote about herself called My Beloved World. Okay, so stop one more time here at the end of this biography. What are any other things that you have learned about Sonia Sotomayor? And I guess one new thing that I learned is that she wrote a book about herself. I didn't know that. I kind of want to read it. Okay, so I'm actually going to stop this video here. We just read through the first two biographies, and then I'm going to do a part 2 video that has us start to take notes about the first biography that I read. So you might choose to just stop the lesson here for today and start with your notes tomorrow, or you might choose to start the second video right now and get started with your notes. All right, thanks. See you soon.